guys, welcome back. It's Danielle, and today I'm going to go over my 2019 reading stats and the 2019 Bookish survey. I do apologize if there is a little bit of a glare on my glasses, but I needed to wear them today because my eyes are so dry because it is super frigid and cold here and super dry. So today is just a glasses sort of day. Anyway, let's dive right into my bookish stats. So I read 41 books in 2019. Of those books, 34 were novels, 6 were graphic novels, and 1 was a non-fiction. As far as genre breakdown goes, I read 17 fantasy books, 8 contemporaries, 7 sci-fis, 5 classics, though some of the classics that I read fit into other categories, so these are kind of just the best I could fit them into as far as genre goes. 2 historical fictions, 1 crime or mystery, and 1 nonfiction, like I said earlier. My breakdown by age category was 17 adult books, 14 YA books, and 10 middle grade or children's books. And I feel like that was a pretty even spread across the board, which surprised me. I definitely thought I read the most YA, but I read more adult than YA, and I actually did a decent job reading middle grade and children's this year too, partially because some of the classics I read were children's classics, and then I participated in the Magical Middle Grade Readathon this fall, and so that definitely bumped up my middle grade reading. As far as star rating goes, I did not have any 1 or 2 star books. And then for the rest of my star ratings, I did split up 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, and 5. So for 3-star books, I had 2. For 3.5-star books, I had 3. For 4-star books, I had 16. 4.5 stars, I had 7. And 5 stars, I had 12. And there was 1 book that I had that I did not rate. So overall, I feel like I had a pretty good reading year, and I liked or really loved most of what I was reading this year. Out of the books that I read, 2 of them were rereads. I reread North of Beautiful by Justina Chen Headley, and I also reread The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgins Burnett. In addition to the 41 books that I read, I also DNF'd 8 books. So I'm counting DNFs as books that I started in 2019 and did not finish by the end of 2019. So a lot of these books I am still planning on reading and still planning on finishing. They've just been moved to my 2020 TBR, which I don't have an official 2020 TBR really, but they're books that I do want to finish reading at some point, and they're kind of higher on my priority list. Some of them I picked up and I put down, and I'm probably not going to pick up again anytime soon, but I, eventually maybe will finish reading them. And then some of them I'm just probably not ever going to come back to. So I'll just go over quickly which titles I did DNF this year. Starting off, I DNF'd Air Awakens by Elise Kova, Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo, Illuminae by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. This one is a little bit of an anomaly because this was a reread for me, and I was trying to listen to the audiobook with my husband because I really wanted him to read the series, and he and I just never finished the audiobook. So I've read this book already, but I guess I DNF'd it on my reread of the audiobook. Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson, The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch, House of Salt and Sorrows by Aaron A. Craig, Red Sister by Mark Lawrence, and Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. So now getting into the 2019 Bookish survey. This is a survey that is put out every year by the Perpetual Page Turner. I will link her blog down below, just so if you guys are interested in checking out the questions, you can kind of see where I got them from. And I did not answer every question, but I tried to answer most of the questions, and I also tried to pick a different book for as many questions as possible, so I wasn't repeating myself so much, so I could kind of talk about a lot of the books that I read this past year. So the first question is the best book that you read in 2019. And this was really hard for me to narrow it down to one book. I have a lot of books that I loved in 2019, and so it was so hard for me to pick just one, but I decided to pick SKYWARD by Brandon Sanderson. I feel like I talk about this book the most, and I come back to think about this book the most. So I'm gonna say that that was my favorite book of 2019, but I have a lot that I loved. Question number 2 is a book that you were excited about and thought you were gonna love, but didn't. And for this, I picked The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi. I was super pumped about this book, and it just wasn't quite what I was expecting, and I felt pretty let down by it. I do have a full review if you want to go check it out. Question number 3 is the most surprising book that you read in a good way. And for this, I picked The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I won this book in a giveaway, and I heard a lot of people talking about it, and I decided to pick it up even though it's a genre I hardly ever reach for. And I loved it and realized that adult contemporary fiction or adult contemporary romance can be a category that, or a genre that I really enjoy reading. A book that you pushed the most people to read. And I don't know that I pushed anyone to read any book this year, but I feel like over on my Instagram I talked about SKYWARD a lot, and maybe the most. And so I maybe would pick that book, but I don't know that I actually convinced anyone to pick up any book this year. So if I convinced you to pick up a book this year, let me know what it was down below, because I have no idea. Question number 5 has a couple parts to it. What is the best series you started in 2019? And I'm going to go with The Stormlight Archives and The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. The best sequel of 2019, I'm going to say Seeker by Kim Chance. And then the next question is also the best series ender of 2019. And I only finished one series this year, and it was the Keeper duology by Kim Chance, so I'm also going to say Seeker by Kim Chance. Number 6 is a new favorite author you discovered in 2019. And I'm going to do a little bit of a stretch on this one and say Neil Gaiman. So I did read the graphic novel version of Coraline last year, which is technically by Neil Gaiman, but I didn't read any of his novels until this year. So I'm going to go with Neil Gaiman, and I read 2 books by him this year. I read The Graveyard Book and Norse Mythology, and I loved them both. I listened to them both on audiobook, and he narrates them both, and he is fantastic. Question number 7 is the best book from a genre you don't typically read or was out of your comfort zone. So I'm going to say A Heart and a Body in the World by Deb Coletti. This is a YA contemporary fiction, and I picked this up because Heather over at Bookables talked about it and talked about how she loved it last year, I believe, and felt like it was really underrated on BookTube and doesn't get talked about. And I would wholeheartedly agree. I absolutely loved this book. It was heartbreaking, but you should read it. It's so good. Question number 8 is the most action-packed, thrilling, or unputdownable book of the year. And I would have to say A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmerer. I could not stop reading this book, and I cannot wait to read the next one. Question number 9 is the best book you read in 2019 that you would be most likely to reread next year. And for this one, I'm going to go with Pride and Prejudice. I really want to reread this book already because I'd love to go through and annotate it and just think more about it now that I know kind of the story and the characters. And I hopefully will get to reread it this year. Not 100% sure that will happen, but I'm hoping. Question number 10 is favorite cover of a book you read in 2019. And for this, I'm going to say my top 3 because I just couldn't pick. The first one is Vicious by V.E. Schwab in the UK special edition. The next one is This Mortal Coil by Emily Suvada. And then the last one is An Unkindness of Magicians by Kat Howard. They are all just so beautiful. Question number 11 is the most memorable character from a book you read in 2019. And for this one, I am gonna pick a book I haven't talked about yet and say Vasya from The Bear and the Nightingale. Number 12 is the most beautifully written book of 2019, and I am going to say An Unkindness of Magicians. Specifically, the magic system is the most beautiful magic I have ever seen written in a book, and I absolutely loved that part of the book. I mean, I love the whole book, but that part especially really got me. Question number 13 is the most thought-provoking or life-changing book that you read in 2019, and I am going to again say A Heart and a Body in the World by Deb Coletti. It was just such a powerful and moving book, and it really, really stayed with me. Question number 14 is a book you can't believe you waited until 2019 to read, and that is going to be The Giver by Lois Lowry. I have seen this book everywhere since I was in middle school, and I just never read it, and then I finally picked it up this year, and I loved it. Question number 16 is the shortest book and the longest book that you read in 2019, and I looked on my Goodreads, and the shortest book that I read was On Luna Time by Amber Crowley, and the longest book that I read was The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. Question number 17 is a book that shocked you the most, and for this one I am going to say The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. I just felt like this one had the best kind of twists and turns, and the way it was written just really kind of set you up for trying to figure out the mystery and what was going on, and I thought that it was really well written that way. Question number 18 is OTP of the Year, The Ship That You Will Go Down With, which is One True Pairing for those of you who don't know. And again, I could not pick just one because I'm a sucker for a good relationship in a book, and I will usually ship the two people that the author wants you to ship. And so I picked my top 3 for this one as well. So for number 1, I'm going to say Loon and Bren from Reactive by Becky Moynihan. I just love the two of them. Next, I would say Elle and Darian from Geekarella by Ashley Poston. And finally, Elizabeth and Darcy from Pride and Prejudice, because it's a classic. I love it. Question number 19 is your favorite non-romantic relationship of the year. And I definitely have to say Lainey and Maggie from Kim Chance's book Seeker. They are the epitome of best friends, and I love them. And their friendship goes through a lot of trials in this book. And it's really fun to read about, and I love the two of them. Question number 20 is favorite book from an author that you've read previously, and for this one I'm also going to say Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. I really loved all of the Brandon Sanderson that I read this year, except for the one book that I DNF'd, which I still would like to finish, but yeah, definitely Brandon Sanderson is up there with my top favorite authors. 21 is the best book that you read in 2019 based solely off of peer pressure or someone else's recommendation, and I'm gonna have to say Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and that was a recommendation by Murphy. She loves that book, and I'm really glad that I read it because I also loved it. The newest fictional crush from a book you read in 2019, and I'm gonna say both Ren and Gray from A Curse So Dark and Lonely. I loved that book and those boys, though I'm still on Team Ren. Next question is the best 2019 debut that you read, and I only read one book that was from a debut author. Well, I only read one book that was a 2019 debut, and so I'm gonna say On Luna Time by Amber Crowley. It is a self-published book, and you should definitely check it out. The next question is the best world building / most vivid setting in a book of 2019. I'm going to have to say The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. He does a really good job with his world building, and the world in this book is so unique and so well done. Question number 25, a book that put a smile on your face and was the most fun to read. I'm going to say Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. This was another super fun adult contemporary romance that I ended up loving and found a new genre that I really liked. Question number 26 is a book that made you cry in 2019, and that is going to be The Nightingale by KRISTIN Hanna. I cried multiple times reading this book. It was so moving and so powerful and so good, but so sad. I absolutely loved it. Question number 27 is Hidden Gem of the Year, and I am going to go back and say A Heart and a Body in the World by Deb Coletti because I don't think it gets enough love. Question number 28 is a book that crushed your soul. For this one, I'm going to say An Unkindness of Magicians by Kat Howard because the ending of that book crushed my soul so much. Question number 29 is the most unique book that you read in 2019, and I'm going to say The Fifth Season for this one because I just feel like the writing style and the approach that N.K. Jemisin took towards this book with the point of view, it has a second person point of view for a good chunk of the book. A lot of people don't like that, but I thought it was really well done, and it's definitely unique, and you don't see it a lot in books. And then the next set of questions is kind of about 2020 books or books that you want to read this year. And so first up we have one book that you didn't get to in 2019 but is going to be a top priority for 2020. And I am going to say Foundryside by Robert Jackson Bennett, because that was the last book that I wanted to finish in 2019, but I ended up not finishing it, so I'm reading it right now and will hopefully be one of my first reads of 2020. Next up is a book you are most anticipating for 2020, and that is going to be Starsight by Brandon Sanderson, because it is the sequel to Skyward and I'm just really excited to read it, and I got it for Christmas and I can't wait. The next question is a sequel or series ender that you are really looking forward to in 2020. And part of my goals for 2020 is to continue to read series and finish up series, read sequels, finish a whole series. So I have kind of a lot of them on my list. So I picked 3 traditionally published and 3 self-published books that are sequels or series enders that I'm really, really excited to get to this year. Actually, I only picked 2 traditional and 3 indie or self-published books. Just kidding. So the 2 traditionally published books that I am really excited to get to, other than, I guess, Starsight, which I just talked about, so I guess there was 3, are Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson, the next book in the Stormlight Archives, and A Heart So Fierce and Broken, which is the next book in the Curse So Dark and Lonely or Curse Breakers series by Bridget Kemmerer. And then the 3 self or indie published books that I'm really looking forward to reading the sequels. I have Tell Us by Tiffany Hackett, Adaptive by Becky Moynihan, and In Light of Luna by Amber Crowley. The last question related to 2020 is going to be, what's one thing that you hope to accomplish in your reading or blogging, vlogging, YouTube life in 2020? And that is just to keep up with making YouTube videos. Like I said, I have no idea what that's going to look like, but I'm going to kind of put that as a tentative goal with very little constraints or strings attached to that. So we will see how that goes. And then there is one other part of the survey that's talking about like booktube and book bloggers and what you've accomplished on your channel and things like that this year. And I decided not to go into depth and answer those questions, but I am going to shout out my 3 favorite booktubers because I just love watching them, and I think that's kind of a fun way to end the video. So my 3 favorite booktubers from 2019 are Murphy over at Murphy Napier, and I love watching her videos. I really enjoy being part of her Patreon and her Discord group and just the community that she's built over there with buddy reads and encouraging me to read more classics, and her reviews are really great, so you should definitely check her out. Next up is Jen from the Book Refuge. She puts out so much content. I love watching her journey and seeing what she's reading. She reads some of the same stuff that I read and then some very different stuff from what I read, and I just really like hearing her talk about what she's reading and what she likes and doesn't like, and she reads a lot, like way more than I could ever read. So it's kind of fun to see her opinion on so many different books. And she also has a Discord group and a buddy read group that she does, and I really like hanging out over there as well. And then finally we have Jade over at Bedtime Bookworm, and her reading tastes are very similar to my reading tastes, and so I really trust what she thinks of books and what she reads, though she definitely reads a lot more horror than I read, but it makes me interested to try and check out some of the horror books she reads. But as far as like fantasy and sci-fi goes, we have, it seems like, similar reading tastes, and I just really like watching her videos and listening to her thoughts on books as well. So definitely 3 people that I think you should check out. They are my favorites of the year. That is kind of a sample or summary of what I read this year. If you want to check out all of the books that I read this year, my Goodreads is linked down below and you can see those. I have reviews for most of the books that I read in 2019 up on Goodreads. I tried to write a review for every book that I read in 2019. I have not yet accomplished this goal. However, I only have a couple books from the end of the year left to write a review on. So I'm hoping to get reviews written for those books at some point. So if you want to learn more in depth on my thoughts on any of the books that I read, you can check those out there, as well as any of my wrap-up videos. I can link the playlist as well up here. I don't even remember how YouTube works anymore, really. It's been a while. But thank you so much for watching. I think this will probably be my only wrap-up video for 2019. But if you have any other suggestions of things you want to see or hear me talk about, let me know and I'll try and get to it. Otherwise, I will see you guys soon with another video. Hopefully, maybe. That's really an empty promise, I feel like, at this point. But I am going to try and wrap up what I read in January, at least, for the end of the month. So that video will be coming at some point. It's only the middle of the month right now. So, and I've already read one book and I almost have another book finished. So I'll at least have some content to talk about. So this is a really long and rambly outro. Thank you for watching. Happy reading, and I will talk to you again soon. Goodbye.